All right, everybody, what's going on? It's Pat Leonard from the New York Daily News and the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard podcast with the Believe Network, checking in again for another YouTube live Q&A with you, Giants fans, NFL fans, to talk about the latest with your team. NFL Combine is quickly approaching. We're talking about Xavier McKinney tonight. We're talking about Justin Pugh, who just joined my Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard podcast this week and had some great things to say about the business of football, about his own free agency, about Evan Neal and his confidence in him bouncing back in year 3, and some interesting nuggets about maybe what the Giants need in free agency this year from his perspective, being inside that locker room. Also go over some more of the Giants' internal free agents, and we see some of the most loyal fans already in the queue. Michael Knight is in here. Good evening. Hunter says good evening. What's going on, Hunter? Great to see you. G-Man as well. G-Man says great conversation with Justin Pugh today. Thank you very much. Chronicles, authentic. Everybody is in, and we are rocking and rolling here on the live chat. Remember, super chats and super stickers to support the community here if you wish. If not, just hit the thumbs up and the like buttons, and that helps drive engagement and tell more Giants fans on YouTube and across the web that we are live, that we are going, that we are cooking. As you can see, I have a little bit of a different setup today. We're going to try some fun things in the chat, hopefully some visuals and some more live add-ons that can bring an even better experience. Doug, I am going to jump to your question. You say, is it Screwball Thursday? We are drinking tonight. We are drinking Charles Woodson's Intercept Cabernet Sauvignon. So we are drinking wine. Screwball hasn't ponied up yet. We want it to be Screwball Thursdays. We need it to be Screwball Thursdays. But right now we're going with a little red. Again, Charles Woodson's Intercept. I tried that at the Taste of NFL event in Las Vegas at the Super Bowl. Also had it here back in New Jersey, and can highly recommend the wine. So C. Wood, jump on board here on the podcast before it's too late. Going to tell you guys about BetOnline real quick, and then we'll get right into the chat. BetOnline continues to be your number one source for all your basketball wagering needs, including pro and college hoops throughout the year. With up-to-the-minute odds, stats, and trends, you can follow your favorite team's path to the playoffs with in-game live betting, contests, and all the best player props. Experience the world's best wagering platform anytime from your desktop or mobile devices. Head to BetOnline today to become part of the team, and remember to use our promo code BELIEVE for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. As you can see, we can now add our chats and comments into the visual that you can see on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. But if you ask or add comments or opinions and questions to this chat, we will post them right here as we are talking about them. So another great way for you to get highlighted, for contributing, for people to see who is really chiming in here and providing all of the great content and all of the great feedback that I'm getting from you guys as well. So again, really appreciate you guys being here. Let's get to G-Man says, it seems as if Daniel Jeremiah said today during a draft conference call that moving from number 6 to 3 is a possibility, trading number 6 this year, both seconds this year, and a second next year. G-Man, it is definitely a possibility in my mind that Joe Schoen would make a move if he identifies that number 1 can't miss, got to have it quarterback. And frankly, I think he should. I think he and Brian Daboll may never get to draft their own quarterback if they don't do it now. And so if they find that QB, now that's the question. Don't reach for one if you're not completely convinced it's a guy that can go win you a Super Bowl. Now, I think it's one thing to say, should you make the call and is it possible? It's another thing to say, are the Patriots actually going to slide back out of a slot to pick a quarterback? Because they badly need a quarterback, right? We know that number 1 with Chicago likely isn't happening. We know trading with Washington is just a non-starter because of their quarterback need and also being a division rival. The Patriots, therefore, become really the only possibility if you're going to make a trade up into that top 3 for a QB. I also, G-Man, I'll say this. I know you got to go get your guy now, and that's what I believe. But to me, you have to avoid dipping too hard into this year's capital in this sense. You need cost control on this roster if you're Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll to continue building what you have in place here. Like they have around 20 million or so in cap space right now. And they're going to be able to clear some space with some moves, some player releases, etc. But, and this is a big but, your rookie class, that's cost control. Having those 2 second-round picks isn't just important because it's high up in the draft. They're also important because those salaries are cost controlled based on their draft pick. So signing a veteran at a certain amount often is more expensive than using the draft pick on the player. Now, obviously, you're still spending money and allocating money and resources to those draft picks and those assets. But to me, it has to be, if I'm Joe Schoen, I'm driving the hard bargain of it has to be a combination of the picks I'm using this year in the trade and trying to dip into next year. Because especially if I'm Brian Daboll, I'm sitting in that room saying, you know, if we don't win this year, if we start 1-5 or 1-6 or 2-8 again, I'm not even going to be the head coach for next year's draft. So who cares if I trade a draft pick who's, you know, somebody else's pick, some other GM's pick? I might not even be here. So for Brian Daboll's sake, for Joe Schoen's sake, I think, yes, you go get your guy if you can. But two, I really do think you have to think about, okay, who on our team could we trade as a part of the package, along with some picks in this year's draft, along with some picks in next year's draft. I don't like the idea of using everything this year to go all the way up to get the guy. But like I said, I'm a big proponent of, if you're a huge believer in the quarterback and in the player, and this is who you've judged is going to be your quarterback of the future, your franchise guy, you can't miss, he's going to win you a Super Bowl in your mind, then there's nothing too crazy than what you can do. Chronicles says the same thing. Pat, what have you heard about the Giants trading up? Do you think it's something the Giants should consider? So it looks like Chronicles and G-Men both paying attention to what Daniel Jeremiah said, both paying attention to what we wrote in the Daily News early this week, and both paying attention to the idea that the Giants are in a position where everything has to be on the board. I would put the question back to you guys because Chronicles, we just talked about that after G-Man asked the question. That's a great question for you guys to kick us off. I would put it to you. What do you think? Do you think mortgage the farm now of this year's draft with that extra capital from the Leonard Williams trade and don't worry about it, just go up and get the guy? Or do you agree with me that you got to try, but you got to see if you can mix in some of next year's assets and be smart about, you know, taking out of the future rather than out of the present? Because this is a roster that needs help now, and it needs help at a, if not a bargain price, then at a reasonable price. All right, we jump to Joe. Joe says, hey, Pat, do you think Xavier McKinney may have gone to the coaches last year to no avail before he went to the media about his frustrations? Yeah, Joe, and I think you should give, unless I tell you otherwise, and this is a really good question, unless we tell you otherwise or I tell you otherwise based on my reporting, you should give people the benefit of the doubt. That goes, you know, players, coaches, etc. Normally, in an NFL locker room and on an NFL team, these guys do not go public until they've exhausted the avenues behind the scenes. Especially, you think about Xavier McKinney being a captain and being somebody who, yes, he vented some frustrations after the Raiders game, and that got him in some hot water with Wink Martindale. But by and large, McKinney, he stood by and stood for what was best for the team all year, bounced back very well from everything that happened the year before with his hand, and a lot of questions about maybe would he be able to produce on the field and be that player again that we've seen in flashes. And yes, the answer to you is yes. I think especially when players start talking about top 5, top 10, and being ranked and who they're compared to, a lot of times that's about, we've had negotiations and we've discussed with our team where they think I'm valued and where I believe I'm valued. And comps are a real thing in the NFL. Like you see at draft time, scouts, draft nicks, people, you know, speaking about this guy reminds me of Ryan Tannehill. This guy reminds me of Chase Young, whatever it is. Like, that's not just something that scouts use as barometers to explain players in scouting. It's also something that comes up at contract time based on age and experience and production at guys at similar positions and similar schemes, etc. And so when Xavier McKinney is saying, I'm top 5 and I haven't even scratched the surface on Instagram, to me, usually that type of thing means that conversations have already occurred where there is some disparity over, the discussion of value compared to where you stand at your position. You might say I'm ranked first or second in this category by Pro Football Focus, and the team might say our internal data has you as the, sixth best safety or whatever it is, right? So yes, those frustrations coming out publicly are most often happening after the behind the scenes avenues have been exhausted. Now, let's talk about, I'm going to take a sip and then let's talk about McKinney for a second, because that's what I wanted to really kick off with. But G-Man and Chronicles brought some really good and interesting discussion point right off the bat about trading up. So when it comes to Xavier McKinney, the $16 million plus franchise tag, even if you just applied it on him just to protect him and keep him on your team, that's a lot of money to spend on a player, because once you use a tag, it's unavailable to you on the salary cap until you do something else. So just hypothetically, before the Giants clear any cap space, when the Giants, let's say right now they have that $19 million in change, if they were to tag McKinney tomorrow with the franchise tag for 16 plus, they would only have $3 million in cap space until they did something else prior to the start of the league year, right? And so, that's one reason they're not going to franchise tag him and have him play on that 1-year franchise tag. It doesn't make any sense, right? If you're going to keep McKinney, who's a player who they value and who I think they can't afford to get rid of and lose, especially being a homegrown second-round pick, a captain, a guy who is a ball hawk in spots when he's played in the deep half, though he has played a lot of different versatile places for the Giants defense. Now, the idea of using the transition tag is a possibility. That's in the $13 million range and change. I think it's actually just under 14. But again, you're using a tag, even if it's just as a placeholder, to preserve your right of first refusal. So that means if I use the transition tag on you, the player, you can go and negotiate as if you are an unrestricted free agent with other teams, but I have a chance to match any offer you get, or else you go, right? I don't get any compensation from you if you leave and sign a contract somewhere else, but you're not technically 100% free. To me, that's a dangerous game to play too. And I would think Joe Schoen learned his lesson a little bit last year with the acrimony that surfaced around and during the Saquon Barkley franchise tagging and those negotiations and kind of the resentment he had against them for a long while there. And it created some ugliness. And we know coming out of this season, Kayvon Thibodeau still talking about it, a player in the locker room, about Saquon versus Jones and the franchise tag and what have you. And so I think even though that is a possibility, the franchise tag, I think that's dangerous too. Like, I think what Xavier McKinney wants is to be paid at the level he believes he is worth. And David Mulugheta, his agent, represents 3 of the 8 safeties who make more than the number that Pro Football Focus has projected McKinney would make in that 13 million and change range. So Mulugheta not just drives a hard bargain, but he gets safeties paid. I mean, he represented Landon Collins when the Giants were like, yeah, go find that deal that doesn't exist. And then he went and got it in Washington, right? So I think that even though that transition tag, all that transition tag talk and that possibility tells me is that the Giants, they do recognize they shouldn't just lose this player, right? Like that they need this player, that he would help them and that they don't want to lose him. So this is a long-winded answer on McKinney, I know, but I think what I'm getting to is I really do think that's a player. Like, we've talked a lot about Saquon, but to me, McKinney's the one who I think you have a better chance of getting done. You want to keep him in your building. It's not the running back position and all that positional value talk and the the ugly history of last year with Saquon, like this is a player you got to get done. And I think they have to sign him to a multi-year deal, both because that's what he wants and deserves, and also because that will help the Giants spread out his cap hit and not be using a tag where it all rolls up in one season and prevents them from operating in other ways. Great question, Joe. All right. So let's see. Playboy Phil says, apparently rumors say it's going to take 3 second-round picks for the number 3 pick. Do you think you could see Trader Joe doing that and then calling Chicago to give up some number 3 and some first, etc., to jump to the first pick? Phil, I mean, here's what I would say. And again, I'll put questions back to you guys and you tell me. To me, the Giants are not a strong enough team to use all of these assets on getting that player and then not being able to fill in the gaps. I think doing something like that, Phil, again, I don't begrudge Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll at all. If they feel like they see that guy, if they think they see that quarterback, whatever they feel they have to do, yeah, go and get it. But to me, it's not as good. It's not a good enough team for the Giants to say, instead of adding another rookie corner with a second or third, or another receiver with a first, second, or third, a couple more offensive linemen with some high to mid-round picks, another edge rusher that can develop. Like, these are all things that the Giants need. And I know they can go out in free agency and sign, and we'll talk about that as well, because Justin Pugh, I thought, had a great point about what he believes is the Giants' top priority, or needs to be the top priority this offseason. To me, Phil, that is just a lot to give up based on what the Giants roster looks like. So I do think, but this isn't anything Joe Schoen doesn't know either, right? Like, when they took over the team, they knew the depth, and even most of the high-end talent was just not good enough or non-existent. And even after 2 years, they still haven't solved most of it. And so they're planning for life without Daniel Jones. And I do think drafting a quarterback's a possibility and even a likelihood, or should be, if they see the quarterback they like. But I do think their team needs to be at a baseline level for them to continue building and supporting that. Not only Daniel Jones, if he is in fact a week 1 starter, but then the other quarterback when he takes over. Phil, good question. G-Man is back in, says, my gut feeling is that Drake May is the number 1 quarterback on the Giants draft board ahead of Caleb Williams. If Chicago takes Caleb and Washington takes Daniels, Shane could get aggressive and go for May. I do think that is a potential logical fit. I think May and even McCarthy are guys who make a lot of sense to me. Joe Shane's a bit of a wild card compared to the standard old Giants draft board that values X, Y, and Z and nothing else, right? And kind of guys have to fit in a box. Not that it hasn't worked for them at times. I just mean like their specific grading system. Like Joe Schoen comes in and it's his show. So yes, it's him meshing and molding with the Giants, but that he adds a wild card element. I did want to say this, and G-Man, thanks for jogging my brain here. One thing I notice already in draft season, and that I know now from covering the NFL full time since 2016, and more even prior to that in bits and pieces, when you start hearing names like red hot on the edge of people's tongues this early, like Malik Neighbors, for example, from LSU, okay? That wide receiver. We have Marvin Harrison Jr., we have Roma Dunze from Washington, etc. A guy like Neighbors, when you hear, I know sometimes teams like to inflate other guys' stock so that their guy falls to them, right? So that happens. But I'm telling you, when a guy like Neighbors' name is universally referred to as, this guy's amazing, he's unbelievable, he'd be my number 1, etc., from people across the board, like, to me, stop mocking him past pick 5. Like, the way that people are talking about him, and I don't know anything specifically yet about like this team's going to take him or whatever, but I'm just saying, when a guy his draft stock gets so hot. It's not like sometimes it's just the smoke is too much for it not to be fire. And so to me, if you're making your unofficial list right now of guys who are not going to be on the board if the Giants stay and pick at 6, like to me, the just theoretical discussion point of it, Caleb Williams off the board, Drake May off the board, Jaden Daniels off the board, Malik Neighbors off the board, right? And Marvin Harrison Jr., let's say. So you're looking at, Odunze, the fourth quarterback, or Joe Alt, right? Now, that's why I do think Odunze has a really strong chance to be the Giants pick if it's not a quarterback. That's what I think right now as we sit. And that's not me saying, oh, they're going to take him. And I talked to this assistant GM and he said that. And, this coach told me this guy's off the board. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying limited the conversations I've had about these things and being around this enough, I can just see who is going to be sky high across the board league wide when it comes to the NFL draft and where that's probably going to place things for the Giants. Luann says, hi, Pat. We need to keep Saquon and McKinney. Easier said than done, Luann, but I hear you. Luann's always bringing the optimism. We love it. Luann, welcome back. Molly Mall says, why would any team that needs a quarterback pass on the QB unless they don't believe in him? Why not go all out next year for your quarterback? Let me read that again. Why would any team that needs a quarterback pass on the QB unless they don't believe in him? Why not go all out next year for your QB? Molly Mall, I'm saying that if the quarterback you believe in is there, you do go all out for him. I'm just suggesting that the Giants can't afford to use so many assets to go get him. Like when Phil mentioned going all the way up to number 1, I would be scared of the team. Let's say they go and draft a quarterback. The plan's to start Daniel, and they're starting Daniel. This kid's sitting and learning, and the team stinks, right? And then you put the kid in for Daniel because the team's losing. You said, we might as well play the rookie, but the team still stinks. Like you have to balance it. That's what I mean by that. But I totally agree. You got to go get him if you see him. Luann says, I don't want a quarterback. Daniel Jones will have a good season with a better line and a star wide receiver. Interesting. Hunter says, I've seen all the mock trades on ESPN that involve Dexter. I want nothing to do with Dexter. Trading Dexter Lawrence? Who's saying that? That's I mean, you're looking at a new GM and a new coach next January if they trade Dexter Lawrence. Luann says, I want an offensive lineman or a wide receiver with the 6th pick, and I don't want to trade up. I don't trust the quarterbacks in the draft. Giants Chronicles says, greatest part about the Justin Pugh podcast was the love sack shout out. Your son loves his love sack. You have multiple, Pat? So, Chronicles. Yeah, so Lovesack is the company that Justin Pugh partnered with after the straight off the couch situation, jumping into the Buffalo Bills game when he signed with the Giants. And actually at that point, he was still in the practice squad. He was a call up, and then he signs afterwards. And I believe on the Greenlight pod with Chris Long and those guys, they, I think, made a suggestion to Pugh about it, I think is how it came about, or they just shouted it out and said he's got to go get a sponsorship because it's too natural or something. And Lovesack reached out, and Pugh and his agent got the deal together. And I ended up doing a story on Pugh and the straight off the couch and Lovesack, and ended up landing a Lovesack through that. And this thing is magnificent. Yes. No, my whole family loves it. I mean, they're amazing. And so that's why I brought it up. I mean, they're not sponsoring me, not yet anyway, but I can't say nothing good things about it. And Justin actually said that they also have a Lovesack type couch that has like speakers and subwoofers inside of it. So like if you like playing video games or, watching movies, that kind of thing, and lounging and having that kind of surround full immersion experience, that was a great one. So I said, oh, we might end up having two now because I might have to go get that. That's what I was saying. But yeah, no, the Justin Pugh podcast was excellent. If you guys didn't listen to it yet, one highlight Justin said was he believes that, like I said to him, give me three things to fix the Giants if you were the GM right now. And Justin Pugh said, he mentioned, he was talking about getting the quarterback right and Daniel Jones deserving a fair shot, but also that Pugh would, in theory, he believes in tying the quarterback salary to a percentage of the salary cap to make sure that the team is balanced and that you can support that quarterback. He also said Saquon Barkley has to be resolved one way or another. We'd love to see him stay. But if the market is going to pay him more than what the Giants believe, might be better for both parties, and he wants Saquon to succeed, but it might end up with him somewhere else. But the third thing and the top priority that Justin Pugh saw for the Giants in free agency was he said they have to go get another closer in free agency. And he believes that even though Thibodeau's coming along, getting better and better, and he's shown flashes of that, and that Dexter Lawrence is one of the best interior defenders in the game, Pugh said that he believes that, listen, the Giants have won their Super Bowls based on the defensive line. Pugh said that if he started a team today, quarterback would be the most important thing, and the second thing would be the defensive line. He said he would just have 8 dogs basically on the defensive line, rushing the passer, getting after the quarterback, making their lives a living hell, making them lose sleep on Monday and Tuesday when they watch film, thinking about how they were going to stop and block them. And so Pugh thinks that the Giants should go invest their money and resources in a pass rusher on that other side that has been there before. Now, again, easier said than done. Like he mentioned Josh Allen from the Jaguars as somebody off the top of his head. Obviously, there's guys like Brian Burns, Neal Hunter, even like then there's like less experience or less expensive guys. You have like the Leonard Floyd, a guy that the Giants have tried to get like 100 times and have never landed. There's Andrew Van Ginkel from Miami. Danico Autry, to me, seems like a natural fit. I mean, he is 33 years old, but played in Tennessee for Shane Bowen and, Mike Vrabel's staff. And Autry is a guy who, when he got to Tennessee, helped change that defense and turn it around, help them stop the run, provide some pressure. Not saying he's the game changer Justin Pugh's talking about, but when I think of fits for the Giants and the coaches and what they can afford, that kind of thing, Autry jumps out to me. Also, like a guy like Josh Allen, who, remember, it was Josh Allen or Daniel Jones. That was the whole conversation back in 2019 NFL draft when the Giants took Jones at number 6. And, I know Trent Baalke, the GM at the Jaguars, already said that Josh is going to be a Jaguar, that they intend to re-sign him, or that they believe they essentially are saying they will. You also have the franchise tag available to some of these teams, Brian Burns, Josh Allen, et cetera. So something to watch there. Daniil Hunter is 29 years old. I guess Andre Patterson would have some experience with Daniil, right? So, don't count any of those guys out. But I did think that was an interesting point from Justin Pugh. Remember, guys, if you want to contribute to the page, super chats and super stickers are a great way. Your comment or question will get elevated to the top and get answered first. Also, if you don't want to do a super chat or super sticker, that's fine. Hit the like button while we are talking. If you like what we're doing here on the chat, it's a great way to drive engagement and tell people that we are here, that we're doing this. Really appreciate you guys all being here. It's always great. I'm actually doing this chat today through our StreamYard app on YouTube. And so that's why we're able to have the chat and the questions now elevated onto the video portion of the page, which I think is a really cool feature that we have here. But if there's anything that doesn't come across, that I don't see, that changes, and that you notice that I'm not noticing or whatever, give me a shout out. It's something that I'll correct as we go forward, on these other chats. I hate saying going forward, and I just said it. I just slipped. slipping into my vocabulary. It's not going to happen. Simeon Toko says it's time to build a real team. I agree with that. It's always hard though. There's that pressure to win for the staffs and the coaches and the GMs. But I agree with you. Luann says fans need to chill out. Molly Mall says I can't believe the team gets a pass and DJ has to take all the blame as if the O-line didn't get him killed. Daboll goes from telling everyone we're going to the Super Bowl to he needs another quarterback. Molly Mall bringing the heat. We are favoriting that one. That is a fire point by Molly Mall right there. Molly Mall, I love it. What a point. What a comment. No, I mean, how can you disagree with Molly right now? Like, to hear Dexter Lawrence at the beginning of the year, it's time to talk Super Bowl. I'm done building. You hear Sterling Shepard say that Brian Daboll's talking Super Bowl behind the scenes. After the season, you hear Kayvon Thibodeau say that he thought the Giants had the kind of team where they were going to go to the Super Bowl. And now this is where they are, right? They don't believe in Daniel Jones anymore. They don't believe in Saquon Barkley, right? If he ends up leaving, right? And if they aren't willing to pay him, like, how do we get here so quickly? How can both be true? Molly Maw, great point. I do think both are true. The offensive line and the personnel, the injuries, and really just a roster construction breakdown from Joe Shane did no favors for Daniel Jones and the offense at the beginning of the year, especially. But Daniel Jones also didn't play well enough. We have somebody with a super chat on the board. Grim Silo jumps in. Grim, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. Grim Silo says, I would argue that getting a quarterback at 6 or even trading up for 3 would extend Joe Shane's timeline. Plus, he doesn't want to bet his career on Jones. Grim, I agree with you that, and actually you can go look at a column I wrote a couple of days ago in the Daily News when we're done here or tomorrow, whenever you want. But I advocated strongly for exactly what you just said, which is go get your quarterback if you're Joe Shane. If you don't do it now, you may never do it. All I'm saying is be measured about making sure you're building a good enough team this year so that you don't have this quarterback waiting in the wings, but you're 1-8 to go out and start the season. The Giants have, outside of the 6-1 start 2 years ago, they've really been terrible to start these years to the point where they're out of it by Halloween or Thanksgiving. Grim, you could theoretically extend a timeline by drafting a young quarterback, right? Ideally, that's what would happen because you'd say, well, we just drafted our guy. We have to develop him, right? And so that could be true. I think you're right about that. I think if I'm Joe Shane, that what you just said is something I'm thinking about is, okay, this year it's going to be hard for us to turn it all the way around. So if I start to steadily improve the team and I also draft my quarterback who looks promising, that people in the building are excited about, coaches are developing, people are gravitating to him, they think we have something going, then yeah, absolutely. If it looks like you hit on that pick, that should theoretically buy you some time. I agree with that, Grim. The question is, though, first of all, Brian Daboll's involved in this as well. So from my vantage point, the Giants do want to do some of the Green Bay Packer model, the Mahomes from Alex Smith model of drafting a guy and not forcing him in there right away to the lineup, especially because they've hamstrung themselves financially, contract-wise, to Daniel Jones for this season. So I think ideally what they want to do is what they've said, which is start Daniel and move on and gradually move to that rookie, that young quarterback. Now, another thing we haven't talked about at all yet, mainly because I haven't heard any credible things yet around the league, information from people that this is happening. But to me, now this is just a talking point, okay? Just a talking point. But will the Giants make calls or try to feel out behind the scenes whether somebody, one of these many teams that doesn't have a capable quarterback, would any team at some point, if Daniel Jones proves that he's healthy in the offseason, try to take that contract off the Giants' hands. Probably unlikely, especially with the injuries. I don't think it's going to happen. But and also, if word gets out that you're doing that as the Giants, then what does that mean? But like, to me, everything's got to be on the table. Everything's got to be on the table. Grim Silo, thank you for the super sticker. Really appreciate you supporting it, supporting our channel here, supporting the community, participating tonight, and setting a good example for everybody on the chat. All right. Chronicle says another thing to take into consideration, Pat, is the fact that the 2025 class of quarterbacks looks bad, and I mean really bad. Yep, that's another consideration for sure. I think everyone, except for Luann so far, I think everyone on here is on the same page that if your quarterback is available, if you're Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, and you're scouting these QBs and you tell yourself, we got to have this guy, that you should try to do everything in your power to go get him. My just asterisk and qualification is, like, who mentioned earlier that it's going to cost 3 second-round picks to go to the number 3 pick from 6. I believe that was the same price that the Jets paid to move up for Darnold, if I'm not mistaken, without looking at it. Does that sound familiar to me? That also was a very early trade. That trade happened when I think we were at the owners' meetings that year. I believe that was maybe the same year. Was that the same year as my report that the Giants were looking into possibly trading Odell and talking to the Rams? I think that might have been the same. We were down in Orlando, which is actually where the owners' meetings are this year. So 3 2s. Now, listen, you're also saying trading up from 6 plus 2 2s this year and a 2 next year. I mean, in that case, you're protecting next year's 1, right? So, it could end up still, though, being a very high 2 next year, along with 2 pretty high 2s this year. So they're not just any second-round picks. But yeah, if I can find a way to dip into next year's assets, that would be ideal for me. Mike says, Pat, I completely disagree with your premise that the coach and GM jobs are on the line. Before their arrival, the team won 5 games a year the past 10 years. Mike, I think you're just underrating a little bit, at least from my perspective. Now, listen, Mike, you could be right that no matter how bad this coming season goes, that John Mara and Steve Tisch are just going to, sit there and say, no, we have to give them 5 years. We're committing to this, right? That there's always a possibility. But from my informed opinion of this situation, based on how bad it got this year with the coaching staff and with Daboll and with Joe Schoen on the headsets listening in and with the internal dynamic of the Giants, they're very aware internally of what has gone wrong and what can't be tolerated. And, if it stays bad or gets worse this year, there very much will be people losing their jobs at a high level. Now, Mike, I do think that Daboll and Schoen very much could be in different buckets altogether. Okay. I think as of right now, internally, they probably are. But I think that if Joe Schoen's personnel build this year strikes out the same way in a large way that he did in the first 2 years from a draft free agency perspective, percentage-wise, and the team fares poorly again and it's dysfunctional again, there's a possibility they could be in the same bucket. But I do think it's more likely, like if somebody was like Daboll's on the hot seat, I think Schoen could end up there even if he's not internally there now. But I think it would be, personally, I believe it would be crazy to say that they've done a good job to this point, especially with the roster build portion of it, to get the team to where it needs to be. You mentioned the offensive line, Molly Mall there, about not giving Daniel enough of a chance. And the fact of the matter is they've just struck out really badly so far here with this regime, building the offensive line to even a competitive and reasonable level. John Feliciano just started in the Super Bowl and had, from start to finish of the season with the Niners, a really good year. They just let him walk out the door. It wouldn't have been that hard to keep him. All right. Kelly Fisher says they need to use next year. Mike, by the way, thank you, though. I mean, dissenting opinions are more than welcome here. Really appreciate it. And I would ask you, Mike, could you share how much patience then does a regime get? Because you're absolutely right. When they took over, this was a full-fledged, like from the studs nearly rebuild in a lot of ways. But there was Andrew Thomas, there was Dexter Lawrence, there was Saquon Barkley, et cetera, right? So the cupboard wasn't completely bare. But for sure, they deserved a long leash, long rope, whatever you want to say. But I guess, the way I see it too is like Joe Judge came in, was promised 3 years and got 2. And so in the modern NFL, it's not even about like, oh yeah, well, we promised you that, we got to stay by it. It's about what have you done for me lately? It's about ticket sales. It's about, especially from the Giants ownership's perspective, frustration, right? And it sounds to me like you're underrating the regressions that we saw last year. But I want to know from you where do you see it breaking down between keep giving them more time and how many years it takes and when you would say enough is enough? But I really do want to know that. But thank you. He says they took a roster still riddled with giant holes of the playoffs. Right. Yeah, no, they did in year one. Largely a 6-1 start there and the playoff win. Yeah. Hold on. Let me just turn off this flickering light we have here. If I'm podcasting enough and live streaming enough, if I don't charge everything, sometimes one of the lights go. But here we go. Let's get to the next question. Oh, Kelly said they need to use next year's assets as well to move up to get a quarterback. Agree, Kelly. Doug says, what would be your reaction if Giants gave McKinney the transition tag and refused to match a $16 million offer from another team? Giants should almost prepare to match any offer if they transition, right? So Doug, here's another reason. Thanks for bringing this back up because I forgot to mention this part. Here's another reason why that's dangerous. Because if you reporting that the Giants are likely to use a transition tag. Okay, so this is ignoring something very important. Teams don't like getting in the habit of letting other teams negotiate their contracts. Okay, so like the Lamar Jackson situation. Now, some of those teams are just ludicrous for announcing that they weren't going to pursue him when he was possibly available last year. But there's also an element of, we don't want to just draw up. Like, let's say the Packers want Xavier McKinney. Why do the Packers, with the transition tag on Xavier, want to negotiate a deal for him that they believe the Giants are just going to match anyway? They don't want to do that. They don't want to do the other team's work. Conversely, if you're the Giants, if you are willing to pay him a certain amount, do you want to let another team dictate the terms you have to match versus just getting there yourself? Like, it happens, but that is not a preferred route for like all parties involved. And you could also end up in a situation there where if he's on the transition tag and you're committing the 13 million or so to him for the season, that's a full $13 million and 13 and a half, or I can't remember the exact. Oh no, it's 13.9, I believe. That's a full amount. If he ends up playing on that 1-year deal, first of all, it's going to create bad blood in this situation. I can guarantee you. But also, that also puts you in a position where all of that goes up against your cap now. So, Doug, that sounds like jockeying for position in negotiations. I'm still not sure that makes a lot of sense from a lot of different vantage points, though. But thanks for bringing that back up. Simeon Toko says, I don't see the Giants trading up. Too many holes to fill. That's certainly a possibility. Antonio says, do you expect free agent conversations with our own free agents to really pick up this coming week at the Combine? Yes. Joe Shane and Saquon Barkley's agents will reconvene at this Combine and have some conversations. Presumably, they will exchange, initial offers and have a conversation about, listen, here's what we're looking at. We probably think it's not what you're hoping for, but this is what's on the table. If you come back, and it'll be here for you, right? It'll be that kind of conversation probably. This is also where you could tell guys, maybe we're moving on. Like Adoree Jackson, to me, profiles as a guy who, even though he did shut down Justin Jefferson in that playoff game and had some good games in that 2022 year and tackled better, his tackling regressed this year. Season wasn't as good, wasn't as strong. I like Adoree a lot as a captain, was really accountable in the locker room for us in large part this year. Have a lot of fun getting to know him, despite being a USC guy. Go Irish. But, I think especially also you add a lot of Tennessee coaches to the mix with the Giants now. And remember, they come from a team in Tennessee that drafted Adoree but let him walk out the door to New York once his time there was done. And was not, I recall that the word around the league was that he was not exactly getting praised out of Tennessee when he left. Certainly the Giants, though, thought better of him, and he gave them some good ball when he got here. But, that's an example of a guy who might just be told we're moving in a different direction. Or, we would bring you back, but at a very low number that they know he's going to say no to. But to me, that's like a move on situation. Tyrod Taylor, I think, is an interesting one. I personally just watching it all play out and reporting on it and talking to people and him. And, after being benched for Tommy DeVito, essentially, when he came back with the broken ribs and he was determined healthy enough to play, I'd be surprised if he came back into that environment. Then again, he is thriving in New York City. He's a businessman. He's got the Diallo clothing line and is really a star or budding star in the fashion world, if not already one. So I do believe he likes it here, and he knows the people here. They trust him. They know he's a great teammate. But to me, that's another guy who makes sense to be on another team next year. But yes, the NFL Combine is a place for teams to do that. It's already started, like those conversations and the, if you remember, what was it? Last Combine, where, the Combine where, a couple of days at the Combine where I believe when they first came in, when Sterling Shepard had to take a pay cut, when they cut Kyle Rudolph, when they informed certain players that they were releasing them or moving on as cap casualties. So like a guy like Mark Lewinsky being cut for cap purposes, those types of things will also start to happen during this week. Simeon says this team is not one player away. No doubt about it. That's a good one. Luann says Giants need to get a wide receiver in the draft and sign Mike Evans. Mike Evans is a hell of a player. Hell of a player. Luann says, I heard Malik Neighbors is better than Harrison. Yeah, his stock is soaring through the roof. Molly Mall says taking any other quarterback outside the top three is suicidal. Well, most likely in the sense that if you think a guy's can't miss, then the rest of the league does too, and they're going to get him there. So, Molly Mall, you're probably right about that. We also don't know necessarily how the board is going to fall, but I theoretically I agree with you. Molly Mall says, yeah, build the team and fill the holes this year. Get your quarterback next year. Yeah, I mean, you could still, yeah, no, that's tough. That's why that is the rub of this situation. If you don't get the quarterback high, as Joe Shane and the Giants, if you don't get him there, where do you get him? Do you move back into the back of the first round? Do you take the fourth or fifth quarterback on the board in the late first, early second, even if it's at number 6? Is that good enough, right? They're really in a tough spot. Another reason, though, why that trade up to number 3 talk is, is continuing to percolate. Remember, guys, you can purchase a super chat or super sticker to have your question or comment elevated to the top of the chat. If you're getting impatient, if I haven't gotten to it yet, or if you feel like it's invaluable to keep us moving and exactly at the point where we're talking about now, great way to support our community. If not, no super chat or sticker. You can still give us a thumbs up while we are live. It helps drive engagement here and on YouTube. It tells people we are live. We really appreciate you all being here as always. We've been doing these in the off season, Mondays at noon, Thursdays at 9 p.m. Also, the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard podcast. Just had Justin Pugh on. Some really good answers and stories from him about the NFL Combine, his free agency. Also, we talked about Evan Neal today. I'll post a clip on my social media when we are done here tonight from the interview. But Justin Pugh was talking about how to scout offensive linemen, how if he were a general manager in New York, he would redshirt every offensive lineman he drafted out of college because of how much there is to learn, how much pressure there is to perform right away when they do play as rookies. And he also said it's important to put them in positions to succeed, which usually ends up meaning putting them in the exact positions they're most comfortable in on the line. So if the guy's a left tackle, play him at left tackle. If he's a right tackle, play him at right tackle. Like Pugh said, being moved to right tackle as a rookie in his early NFL career with the Giants, really didn't help him. He was a left tackle at Syracuse. He struggled on the right, and he didn't get comfortable until 3 years in when he got moved back to the left side to left guard, and that's where he settled in. And so Pugh brought up Evan Neal as a player who, maybe looking at Justin Pugh's trajectory, that's a situation that you could maybe mirror or apply here. So he said it wouldn't surprise him. It wouldn't surprise Justin Pugh if Evan Neal got work at both right tackle and left guard in year 3. Remember, he played a lot of ball on the left side at Alabama. He played, I believe, 28 of his 40 starts on the left side of Alabama. One season at left tackle, one season at left guard, one season at right tackle. That versatility is great, but given how the first few years have gone and given what you're trying to do to not only improve the line, also maximize this asset, but improve this player's career and trajectory and confidence, right? And Pugh thinks that that's something that could really work from his vantage point, especially having gone through it himself. So he said he has confidence in Evan Neal, and he thinks that that's something that wouldn't surprise him if the Giants worked him there. Obviously, it's not the first time this has come up, the Evan Neal possibly to guard conversation. But along with what I told you coming out of the Senior Bowl, talking to Joe Shane, I do believe that signing a tackle, not only signing like a right tackle, but also Pugh even mentioned, along with going after another edge rusher, signing a veteran swing tackle, a backup tackle, somebody who you're investing real money in, who's available to reinforce your front if a guy like Andrew Thomas is unavailable. If either another young guy you draft or another free agent you sign at right tackle goes down. You can't be forcing guys into positions they're not ready for, that they're not comfortable in. And that's part of what the Giants have struggled with so far. But I thought that was really interesting, even though we've talked about Evan Neal already and a possible move to left guard. I thought it was really interesting to hear Justin Pugh suggest that as possible advice that could help the situation of a young player and teammate that he thinks has a lot of potential. And then he said, hey, who knows, maybe Evan Neal would, eventually turn into a great left guard in the NFL and break the bank with a big free agent contract. And it turns out that's where he should have been the whole time. So I thought that was really interesting of Pugh to say. Okay. Kelly says, we have given so many draft picks to the O-line. I know we need help, but I want proven players. Toko says, edge is a must. No question about it. Just going to give Grim Silo some more love for that super chat. Really appreciate that, Grim. Hunter says, the one I think that involved Dexter Lawrence, the trade proposal that you saw, wasn't for a pick. Now that I remember it, it was for Stephon Diggs. But I do know, I think Mike Tannenbaum on Get Up said they should give up Kayvon Thibodeau, the 6 picks, 2 seconds, and a 1. Jeez, for pick number 1. Really? Man, oh man. That's a lot. That's a lot. Molly Mall says, Pat, did you hear Edelman say someone told him who played for both Daniel Jones and Josh Allen that Daniel Jones was more accurate and it wasn't even close? No, I didn't see that. That's interesting. I don't think Daniel Jones's accuracy is the problem, Molly. I think the problem is when the game speeds up, third downs, against the blitz, under pressure, those decision-making situations, the red zone situations when the field shrinks. Like I think about that first game, I think was that first game of Joe Judge's tenure where they drove down early against the Steelers, and then Jones like rolled out to the left and like had a pass batted down and intercepted by Bud Dupree, I believe. And then you have the play against the Seahawks this year where he kind of felt pressure before it got there, rushed a throw, didn't let the routes develop and see open guys, and Witherspoon returns it as a pick six. That's an interesting comment, Hunter, or Molly, sorry. Molly, that's an interesting thing for you to bring up. Appreciate that. Doesn't surprise me. I mean, Josh Allen, though, also after year one, remember, like Josh Allen college in year one is a different quarterback than Josh Allen year two on. And I mean, just going to tell you, I mean, there's no one in the entire league who would take Daniel Jones over Josh Allen. So not to rub it in or anything, but Mike says a team that averaged 5 wins the past decade has one okay year and they should go to a Super Bowl. No, I don't think that. That's what they were saying. That's what they were saying. That, you know, that was kind of what they were saying internally. Intel, the developer, what's up, Intel? Says make the trade for the quarterback. Hunter says if you draft a QB, start with Danny and he plays well, that would be a win-win. Maybe get something for him during the year in a trade and go to the rookie. Hunter, love it. I'm starring that. That's a really good point. Doug says the problem with the young quarterback extending the timeline is that there still has to be some level of conviction in the quarterback. Frank Reich didn't even get a full year after their first choice at quarterback. Yeah, also like the CJ Strouds of the world coming in and, you know, doing it right away. Like, I'm not saying that's necessarily the path. I do think the Giants would love to go the path of letting a guy watch before he goes in. But, sorry, I got distracted by one of your comments down below. I'll get to it in a second. But, you know, it's not impossible if you have a good team around a young guy to succeed, I guess is the point I was getting to. Intel, the developer, says Shakur Sanders is not bad. Yeah, you know, I think you think John Mara and Steve Tisch would like, you know, Dion holding impromptu press conferences on podcasts about how his son was being handled in New York. Steven says Sanders will be the first quarterback off, and I'd be okay, but he's quarterback 5-6 in this draft. Molly Mall says, hold up. Is that a Daniel Jones bobble in the background? I don't see anything wrong with building the team and giving him one last chance. Yeah, so this is Lawrence Taylor. This is LT. This is, hold up. This is Daniel Jones. Saquon Barkley, Offensive Rookie of the Year. And up here, that's me as a reporter interviewing. You can't see it all the way at the top. There's one of John Tortorella from my Rangers days. And there's little Eli back there. So the collection's growing. A few of these are from FOCO. Appreciate the FOCO people, as always. All right. Jay Mazzella says Daboll was coach of the year and now is on his way out. Well, he goes into this year with a chance to prove which year was the anomaly. Jay Mazzella thinks they both will have rope. Mike says 4 years would be fair, considering they did go to and win a playoff game, something that hasn't happened since Tom Coughlin. Even with all the dysfunction and injuries to key players, they still won 6 games. All right. I appreciate that answer, Mike. I do think the injuries and dysfunction you can attribute to them as like, you know, blame. But listen, I wouldn't have any problem with the Giants finally giving someone, you know, 4 years to try to figure something out. I'm just saying this headed in a wrong direction very quickly this year. And we need to see signs that it's going to reverse. And, you know, we're waiting on those signs. But, Mike, I do think that, you know, patience in the modern NFL is short across the board now and doesn't happen enough. But, you know, certainly there's a long list of people who deserved more years and a longer rope than, like, for example, like you're saying, all these different stabs. Now I get it. They won a playoff game, but, um, there's a long list of people who haven't gotten what they were promised as far as those timelines. But I guess better late than never to give people a fair shake. Hunter says, who are guys that could be cap cuts? Mark Lewinsky is at the top of the list. Boogie Basham's one as well, as a candidate. I mean, those are guys who this regime brought in and signed. So, again, would be dumping guys that you brought in. It's not like it's the old regime's baggage or anything. So those are two to take a look at. Mike says we need a quarterback. The Niners had a better roster, but the Chiefs had the better quarterback. If you do not have a top 10 quarterback, you're in a purgatory. Absolutely. Also, when we talk about, you could get a quarterback anywhere, right? Like Jalen Hurts, 2nd round pick. Dak Prescott's a 4th round pick. Brock Purdy is Mr. Irrelevant in the 7th round. Yes, but especially like look at Purdy. Like he joined a really talented team. Now, that doesn't mean it was easy for him. There are a lot of quarterbacks who didn't succeed where he did, right? But that said, he joined a team that could support him better, that was very talented around him, right? So if the Giants were to, like as we were talking about earlier, if they don't draft a quarterback high, but they still take one, do they have the team to give that quarterback a chance to succeed early on? G-Man says, Pat, if the Giants are bid out for the big name offensive lineman in free agency, do you think it could be open to bringing in Kevin Zeitler for a potential reunion? He was an all-pro and a Pro Bowler. Great person, great guy. Don't necessarily view Zeitler as a guy who would hold any kind of grudge. I mean, I don't know why he would leave a team that had Super Bowl hopes and aspirations for a team that doesn't. So I think that would be a concern there. I think Zeitler is a guy, if he's proven valuable to one of the best teams in the league and really the best team all year, last year in the NFL until they bowed out in the playoffs. I'm not sure at this point he would be going somewhere, as part of a rebuild. I would think he would play for a contender. But, if I'm the Giants, I would absolutely try to make it happen. Hunter says, I think Mike Evans takes less to play with Pat Mahomes. Yeah, I think that's something to always remember. Is that, a lot of these guys want to go play for contenders. And if they're going to take less, it's not going to be at a team like here, given where the Giants are right now. Simeon says, I would take the best quarterback available with the 2nd pick and address the offensive line in free agency. Simeon, I don't hate that route. With the 2nd pick, you mean their 2nd round pick, or like going back into the top of the 1st? I think the Giants need to be more competitive. I mean, like Mike and I disagree a little bit, but like they were not a competitive team this year. As we finish our intercept. All right, let's check it out. We've been going an hour strong. Thank you so much for being here, guys. Really appreciate you as always. Remember, Pat Leonard for the New York Daily News, NFL columnist and Giants beat writer, Talkin Ball podcast with Pat Leonard, Talkin Ball live chats and Q&As with you guys, the fans, the loyalists. We are here Mondays at noon or Thursdays at 9 p.m. We're on the Believe Network with our podcast. Continuing to build out this platform on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. The handle is at PL on NFL, like Pat Leonard on the NFL, PL on NFL. And I'm on Facebook, Pat Leonard, and I'm on X, P Leonard NYDN, and on Threads, PL on NFL as well. Let's see. Let's get to some more of your questions. Really appreciate you guys. Again, this has been an awesome one as always. Host Dahar says Brian Thomas Jr. was the best LSU wide receiver. Dude looks like Marvin Harrison Jr. He's being slept on. Brian Thomas Jr. We'll keep that in mind. Thank you, host. Sorry, just answering a text. Super Unknown says, I would not be. So you're not all about the Giants moving up. We never know how the draft top quarterback works. Build the team up and find the late quarterback second round. I like Spencer Rattler, McCarthy, Nix, Penix. Yeah, no, Super Unknown. This is the trade up conversation is such a great one because there are so many variables to it. You guys are practically writing my own next quarterback trade up story for me with all of these ins and outs. And this is like a big brainstorm about it, right? But Super Unknown brings up another good point about this, which is if you know, which we think we know, that I'm going to star this comment. That's a really good one. If we know that Caleb Williams and another quarterback are going to go 1-2, and it would just be crazy for those two teams not to take a quarterback, right? Let's just even say it doesn't even matter which ones, right? You're just going to take two QBs. He's right. That means you're trading up to 3 for the third quarterback on the board. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't matter if he's the third quarterback off the board or the first, if you think he's your guy and he's awesome, right? But to your point, you don't have control necessarily over what the first two teams are doing. And also, if that third pick's for sale, a team like the Atlanta Falcons could be trying to move up for it. You're not going to be the only team bidding for that pick, most likely, right? If it's available. So that's another thing to keep in mind. But I think you guys are all hitting on something really important here, which is that, like I said, when there's smoke, there's fire. When it comes to a guy like Malik Neighbors and his draft stock, enough people are talking about Joe Shane and the Giants moving up now, where like this very public conversation about the Giants moving up, to me, is a reinforcement of how much Daboll and Shane and the Giants are looking at life after Daniel Jones and the idea, I don't know, maybe internally they're trying to convince other people that it's time, right? That could be another thing. Or they're trying to get the word out that way so that the phone calls happen and, the conversations happen earlier, right? That's another possibility. Simeon, thank you so much. I just noticed your super chat and your super sticker. Really appreciate that. $2 into the chat. Really, thank you so much. He says, Pat, I think the NFL needs a developmental league. Yeah, well, right now it's called the NCAA, right? The XFL, these other leagues, they try. I think what you're hitting on too is the idea of like guys needing a red shirt and kind of a ramp up. And, like Pew talked to me about learning how to pick up stunts and pass rush games and, working on double teams and learning and studying and learning what opposing defensive coordinators like to do on third downs and how they like to try to trick your eyes. Like all those things that's something that as a player, as an offensive lineman, as an NFL player, you need to, if you get thrown into the fire, sometimes if you fail, you don't get a second chance, right? And so, yeah, unfortunately, I don't think anything that would thrive is coming down in that direction, Simeon. But your point is well taken about what's required of development. That's why the scouting element of guys' upside is important. And also, coaches' ability to incorporate and develop young players is really critical. Like the Houston Texans with how CJ Stroud got comfortable, how they incorporated some rookies, how they patchworked their offensive line. Like the Giants had all those offensive, like Mike mentions about the Giants having all these injuries and still winning 6 games. The Texans' offensive line was in shambles injury-wise. They went to the playoffs, So it's like these are all things that are very important. Super Unknown says Justin Pugh sounds like a GM in the making or an offensive line coach. Yeah, Pugh also told me that he got accepted to the NFL's broadcast boot camp. So he wants to be a star analyst. If he wants to be, real estate executive, which he's already in real estate, he could do whatever he wants. If he wants to get into a front office, he's a smart, eloquent, good guy. Super Unknown says, I know you are not a fan of Rattler. You know what's funny? Spencer Rattler in person, I saw him at the Super Bowl. He looked small to me on the field at the Senior Bowl. when I saw him in person around like normal people, he didn't look very small. It's like 6'1" or so. Just really funny. I mean, these guys on the field are such giants. But listen, he showed out at the Senior Bowl. He showed me something. He showed a lot of people something. There's also a question with a guy like Spencer Rattler of, again, is Shane the wild card of, like, obviously they draft a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson, undersized player. Now, would they draft an undersized quarterback, right? Now, I know 6'1" is not 5'10", but just saying, like, the Giants grading system and the way they look at quarterbacks, they value that height, right? The Eli Manning, the Daniel Jones, the 6'4", 6'5" area. Like, that's where they want to be as an organization historically. So that's something to factor in. But Rattler certainly is a gamer. Steven says, looking forward to watching the Pew podcast tomorrow. Do you think the best option to fix the line is through free agency? Yeah, I think Jermaine Elamanour, I think is how you say his name, from the Raiders, a guy that maybe you could pay a little money, not too much, and get a lot out of him because he's worked with Carmen Brasillo for so long, and he got a lot out of him with the Raiders. They both Patriots people as well. He makes a lot of sense for me as a right tackle, and I think you got to get in that guard market too. Justin Pugh, reading between the lines, it sounded to me like he thinks maybe in the second or third wave of free agency it'll work out, but he understands he has other options, and he may end up taking one of those options as well. So he said he wants to be in New York, but we'll see. You need a dance partner at the prom, essentially, is what he said. Let's see. Authentic giving Hunter some props, no doubt. I love it when you guys are also interacting between each other, talking to each other about kind of what's dishing and what's going on, as well as we're talking about it here. All right, let's see. We're coming down the home stretch of the chat. Kelly says, if the Giants gave Gettleman 5 years, they need to give Shane the same. Yeah, that to me, Kelly, is that's the strongest argument to me. If you gave Dave Gettleman 4 years, if you gave Gettleman 4 years, then Joe Shane deserves 10, right? Mike says, Michael Onwenu, New England Patriots, plays guard and tackle. He and Neal could fight it out for both positions. Let the best man win. Onwenu has experience playing both positions. Perfect fit. Oh, I agree with you, Mike, that Onwenu would be a great fit. Great fit. I just can't imagine the Patriots letting him out of the building. I mean, he's one of their best all-around players. So that's, again, like you and I were talking about who was it? Josh Allen, the pass rusher from the Jaguars. It's like, hey, that would be a great guy to go get if his own team didn't re-sign him or tag him, right? So Onwenu, Josh Allen, these are players who, if they don't get tagged or re-signed, yeah, like, go get them. But I don't have a lot of confidence that the Patriots are not going to keep Onwenu. I mean, they need him. Danny R. But Mike, good comment. Danny R. says, Jaden Daniels, you are a New York Giant. Come on, Pat. Agree with me. Possibility. I'm doing a lot this year on the quarterbacks. That's the number one story this spring. Intel says it's been 6 years and Daniel Jones still hasn't won the NFC East. Please let it go. There you go. Super Unknown says, Dag Pat, won't listen to the tabloids that you're not a Giants fan with a Daniel Jones bobblehead. That's right. How could we have the Daniel Jones bobble, the Saquon bobble, the Eli bobble, the LT bobble? I mean, come on. We got Harry Carson here. Like, come on. Show some love, show some respect. You know what I mean? You guys are great. Diehard Giants fans here. Diehards only. Authentic, giving some more love. Timothy says, will the Giants restructure Thomas Lawrence and Okereke contracts and cut Slayton, Robinson, Basham, and Brightwell to create $67 million in cap space? No reason not to do restructures, in my opinion, Timothy, with the guys, especially those three key players. Slayton's been pretty consistent for them. I'm not sure why you just outright cut him right now. But yes, all those guys you mentioned, that all of that is sensible. Other than Slayton, I'm not sure I follow that one. Hunter says if a team called and said, here is a seventh, we'll take Daniel's contract right now, do the Giants take that? It would be interesting. It'd be almost like if the Giants would have to give that team a pick. Like let's say the Giants trade back and give that team one of their, like a higher pick back and trade back to that team's pick. So they almost have to give up something to get the team to take it, right? Authentic is right. The dead cap on Daniel Jones' contract would make a trade tough. You could try to do like a post-June and make it that way, because if you do a post-June 1st trade, I believe, then you can cut down the cap hit there. But yeah, no, it's dicey and less likely, but I think you got to look at everything. Why is it so hard for this team to just rebuild, says Intel? Well, because they didn't stick with the plan, right? Like they every time they sniff a little bit of promise, they go all in the following year and fall on their face. It's like a vicious cycle. They have to stop doing it. But, some of these guys with dead cap hits, with the void years they used last year, the A'Shawn Robinsons, and I mean, the Giants thought they went all in last year. I mean, it's embarrassing considering how it turned out. But they just can't stick on the plan. They accelerated the plan. Hunter says, I'm all for trading up for a quarterback, but I don't want to give up a crap ton of picks. Quarterback only fills one hole. We have like 8 that need to be. If you draft a quarterback in the first round, says Mark, Jones would have to be nuts to hurry back, take it easy, and count the $40 million. Well, yeah, also, Mark, it's funny because, like, as much as you say, oh, well, let's draft a quarterback high and let's rest him and let him watch behind Daniel and then groom him and develop him. Okay, great. But we all know in the modern NFL, if you draft a guy high and he's any good, like, he's playing, right? So that's the tough part. It's like it's in theory versus reality. Hunter says no need to reach for a guy if you don't truly believe in them. True. Timothy says, Pat, will the Giants trade next year's first, second, and third, and the 26th first, third, and fifth rounders to the Falcons for Lindstrom and the number 8 pick in the 24 draft? Timothy, that's a lot. But I love where your head's at. You're really thinking. In theory, Timothy, I love any idea that involves borrowing from the future right now to address the present from the standpoint of whose backs are against the wall and what they need to accomplish now. But that's borrowing a lot from the future. That's a little too much for me. Mike said, but I love where you're thinking. That comment gets a favorite. Mike says, Giants fans, stop. Dak, Jalen, Purdy are essentially lotto tickets. So when you say pick a quarterback in round 2, you're saying my retirement plan is a lotto ticket. Though, Mike, no reason not to take those swings. That's what I will say. Take the swings. I firmly believe in taking the swings. Hunter says, Giants can't really afford to redshirt a guy. They need anyone they can get. I agree, guy sitting the first year is definitely best, but it's hard for the Giants to do. Right. How many quarterbacks win the Super Bowl, says Molly. All this, you need a top 10 quarterback is misleading. Justin Herbert is a top quarterback who hasn't even won a playoff game yet. What's his excuse? Daniel Jones set a playoff record with less. But Molly, so like, what would be the reason why like 100% of the league would take Justin Herbert over Daniel as their quarterback as well? Like, I think that the Chargers defense, their coaching, Herbert certainly is not perfect. No question about it. You're absolutely right. I mean, Daniel gets credit for that playoff win. I mean, let's not be crazy, but that Vikings defense was horrendous that they played, not taking anything away from them in that playoff game. But there's factors on both sides. I think the point, Molly, too, is like somebody said earlier about, I think it was Intel. Somebody says like Daniel Jones been here long enough, hasn't won a division like enough. I think once you determine that you have doubt that your quarterback is the guy, like you got to go get another one. Um, I think people are wise in this fan base to the idea that like it's not good enough to tread water. It's not good enough to marginally improve. It's not good enough to like Giants fans are done with being told one thing and believing it when they can see another on the field. Like the losing, it's just been too much. So, um, I think you have to take swings. You have to take swings, and I really do think people are like talking about Daniel Jones and whether he deserves a year and doubt about him or not. Like I just think I'll just tell you right now. Like I think that the Giants are planning for life after Daniel Jones. That's my viewpoint, my informed perspective on the way they are approaching this year and next. Authentic says the Texans had 7 offensive line that hit IR this year. Exactly. Why would anyone not want a top 10 quarterback on purpose? Question answers itself. Good discussion there on the quarterback. If Daniels falls, would absolutely draft him. Dynamic playmaker, says Authentic. Do you have any burning questions prepared for Shane's presser, says Doug. Doug, you know what? I think all my questions revolve around, well, he's not gonna tilt his hand about everything he's pursuing, but I really do think, Doug, that where are they going to spend money in free agency is another thing I'm really interested in. But the quarterback is everything. Like the quarterback, the top of the draft, all that talk, that's everything. But edge rusher, like where are you going to break the bank in free agency? That's what I'm really interested in too. Also, to be honest, like, questions about his faith in Daboll, his viewpoint on what happened last season, like all those things, getting that on the record, I think is important too. How are you going to, what changes are you going to make? Hunter says, Pat, why would you pay a lineman big money if you were Joe? Say that's Pat's guy if he wanted to come here. Would you pay a lineman big money if you were Joe? Like say that's Pat's guy if he wanted to come here. I think I would pay a tackle big money. Even a guard. I mean, at this point, John Michael Schmitz needs, some steadiness around him. You have Andrew Thomas, but you need to get that right tackle position right, and you need to strengthen the interior. I do agree with Pugh, though, that like the big money makes more sense at edge rusher, but the offensive line, they have to fix that. They have to fix that now, both for Daniel Jones and a quarterback if they're bringing him in. Yeah, Molly Mall's right. Purdy came into a team with the Niners team that had a very good roster. Molly Mall stirring the pot tonight. Love it. Intel says just rebuild the damn team. Agreed. Brian Boyle in the house. What's up, Brian? Says just getting here. Not sure if you hit this topic, but love to hear your thoughts on the Matt Araiza signing. Yeah, Brian, I think the Chiefs are well known for taking flyers on guys with red flags or who have had negative headlines surrounding them or about them. I know Araiza, I believe Araiza, I have to refresh my memory on all the specifics, but I believe he was essentially cleared of being involved in the alleged rape, sexual assault, but he was not completely vindicated as being distanced from it either. Is that true? Regardless, makes my skin crawl. I would not sign him. But I do need to refamiliarize myself with all of the details of the situation of how he was cleared and they moved on. I will say this though. The Buffalo Bills, when they did a little bit of digging into that, or when it got out, and there was like a 24-hour period where they looked into it, had some conversations, and they cut him like that. Like that to me, that's what I'll always remember is them cutting him like that. So, Yeah, I would stay away. But remember, the Chiefs, they employed Tyreek Hill during all of that ridiculousness. The allegations of him hitting his son and all those things, domestic violence. I mean, it's an ugly underbelly of the Chiefs. Let's see. A lot of good quarterback back and forth here. Do I think Saquon winds up in Houston? No, but I think, a team like the Chargers, the Ravens, the Chiefs are all teams that I think about when I think about, where will he, who might throw some money at him or think that he could be a really valuable piece to tack on to what they already have. Wouldn't rule out Houston, but yeah, no, I wouldn't rule out Houston, but I just think there's some other teams that make even more sense. Pat, should the Giants trade Waller to the Chargers? I don't think Waller has much value right now, given the injury history. Bill says, good interview with Justin today. He seems like a really cool guy. Thank you, Bill. He really is. Authentic says 100, Pat. Too much losing to settle for average or mediocre at the most important position. Where am I leaning on, running back, free agency, or the draft? Hunter, I think the draft makes more sense based on how Joe Schoen wants to allocate resources at that position. But you do want reliability. So I would say, based on where they stand, probably both. Probably an affordable signing and an affordable draft pick. That's what I would say. What do I think the Chiefs do with Kadarius Toney? Based on how they handled him there, I would say that his time in Kansas City seemed like it was done, but who knows? But it felt like it was done based on how they scratched him healthy for the Super Bowl there. The league will take Herbert because of his talent. I'm not doubting that, but if it doesn't lead to winning, what is the point? Is Purdy better than Herbert? Why does he win more? He's not better than Justin Herbert talent-wise, but he's gotten better coaching and has also made the plays within that coaching, so deserves credit for it. But, Molly, I agree with the idea that you can find quarterbacks elsewhere, but you can't just add them to any team and expect them to succeed. And I don't think the Giants are built strong enough around to just put any quarterback in and have them work. Kelly says Pugh sounds like he'll be a great coach. No wonder the offensive line did better once he got to the team. Yep, he brought them together too. Took them to weekly dinners, started those offensive line dinners, got the offensive players involved, quarterbacks, receivers, etc. Great dude. The fan theory is that John Mara wanted Eli to keep. Is that true? If so, do you think Mara could have played a role in the Daniel Jones contract? John Mara did want Eli Manning. That the whole Eli. I mean, they cut ties way too late with Eli. Mike, that's not a theory. That's factual reporting, no doubt about it, man. The Giants couldn't let go of Eli. It put them in a huge hole franchise-wise. They're still trying to dig out of it. That was a huge part of it. And do I think Mara played a role in the Daniel Jones contract? We know for a fact that he was on the phone with Daniel Jones in the final hour of that negotiation to help get it across the finish line. So now, I don't know based on, I know there's been speculation of, like Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll and the Giants only wanted to go to a certain extent with Daniel Jones, but John Mara and the Giants felt stronger, right? I don't have factual reporting on that, but I will say that I do think the feelings about Daniel Jones internally at this point among the decision makers are as lukewarm as they've ever been since this new regime got here. And I think personally, regardless of what you think about him as a player, like especially with the injuries, those two neck injuries, forget the knee, the two neck injuries, you can't ignore it. Like you have to move on in your mind and have a backup plan because you can't trust that this guy is going to be healthy again, right? You can't trust it. And yeah, no, it all goes back to John Mara. That's his team. Joe Schoen's running the show, but it's always going to be John Mara's team. Guys, thank you so much. We've gone an hour and a half. An hour and a half. It felt like 10 minutes. These are great. I love doing them. the Talkin Ball live Q&As, Giants Q&As with you guys Monday afternoons, Thursday nights. Really appreciate everybody. Really appreciate the super chats and super stickers. We had Grim Silo check in and Simeon Toko check in with those. Really appreciate you. Before we sign off, give me a thumbs up and a like as we talk. Helps to drive engagement. Really appreciate you. Remember, go listen to my Justin Pugh podcast right here on the YouTube channel at PL and NFL. Also posting social videos on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at PL and NFL. Also on Threads, X, P Leonard, NYDN. We'll have more content on the Daily News website. We'll have more coverage from the Combine. I will see you here live next Monday at noon to talk about actually, you know what? Monday is a big birthday for me. So Monday may be off the table. We may end up bringing you a special Tuesday live chat edition next week during the NFL Combine as the Combine kicks off, because Monday is a special birthday, and we'll get on from there and jump into the Combine. So we may go Tuesday, Thursday next week on the Talkin Ball live chat. So I'll keep you updated on the schedule on my social feeds. Thank you, Hunter. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Simeon. Thank you, Intel. Thank you, Hunter. Happy birthday, Pat. Appreciate you. I will talk to you guys next week, and see you on the flip side. Remember, we are sponsored by Bet Online. We're also sponsored by Estate 98 Coffee. It's an Essentia Day Cafe from El Salvador. Dates back to 1798. Takes 3 minutes to make a nice coffee. I drink it all the time when I'm doing Talkin Ball, unless I'm drinking Screwball or red wine, which is out. Got to go pour some more. Intel, thank you very much. See you guys next time.